Hi, this is Amber from Board Game Blitz, and today I'm going to talk about 5 ways you can involve your preschool age kids in the board gaming hobby. Now, this is not just playing board games with them, because I've talked about that in other videos, but 5 ways outside of playing board games that you can involve them in your hobby. I have twin boys who are almost 4 years old, and they love playing board games with me and also like doing everything board game related with me, including filming here, but that's not going to be on the list because not everyone films their love of board games and makes a YouTube channel. But one thing they've really enjoyed, and we found out when we went to a couple of board game conventions, is that my kids love mini painting. So my kids love just like arts and crafts, just like painting themselves on paper and making little drawings and stuff. So when we went to a convention and they had paint and take there for miniatures, I brought them to it and was like, oh, maybe you can try painting my miniature. And they loved it. And that's what they associate with board game conventions now. So I actually don't have many games with miniatures in them, but I actually borrowed some from a friend because he uses a lot of miniatures for his Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And so he had a big bag of miniatures that he got from board games that he said we could paint. I don't have a lot of fancy miniature painting stuff, and with preschoolers, you don't really want to get a lot of fancy miniature painting stuff. So I found that the craft paints that you get at the store, little craft acrylic paints, you can get a lot of different colors for relatively cheap, and those work fine for painting miniatures. I also had like a bunch of cheap brushes that I had gotten before and just used the small ones for them. One thing that a lot of miniature painters use is like medicine bottles and putty tape to hold the miniatures so you don't have to hold it with your hands. So for my kids, I don't have medicine bottles, but we do have Duplos because I have preschoolers. And so if you stack a couple Duplos together, it's kind of like a handle, and you can use, I didn't have poster putty, but you can use poster putty. I now have poster putty and I'm going to use that. But like you can also use Scotch tape and it kind of works. So it works as a little handle and a holder for the miniatures, which is really neat. So that's a great way you can get into the miniature painting hobby with what you have at home for preschoolers. If you have Duplos and Scotch tape and like craft paints. Next up is I like crafting print and play games. So assembling print and play games is something that my preschoolers can help me with. If you don't do print and play games, they can help you with sleeving cards maybe, if you sleeve your cards of board games. So when I make print and play games, I cut out the paper and then put them into card sleeves. And so my kids were helping me put them in the card sleeves. You might want to be careful with this though, because if they try putting it in themselves completely, the card sleeves will get bent because they're not super dexterous. But I figured out that if I put in the cards part way, then they can push it in all the way and it won't get bent. It's when they're trying to open up the sleeve that it gets a little bent. So if you're okay with your sleeves getting maybe a little bit dinged up, then you can have them help you sleeve your cards. Another thing kids can help you with new board games is unboxing and punching out tokens. My kids love getting new board games and opening them up, or they love it when I get new board games. They like opening them up and then they play with the pieces. I let them play with all the pieces too. If you don't care too much about the components' quality, you can let them play with pieces of your board games all the time. But when I get new board games, I let them punch out the tokens because they like doing that. One tip I got from another parent is actually you can punch out the tokens into the box lid or the box itself instead of just anywhere, because when they just punched it out, it would fly across the room and you'd lose all these pieces. But if you punch it into the box lid, which they now do very well, it'll just fly into the box lid and you get all of the tokens nicely in a pile. So the fourth thing you can do with your kids is go to a game store. So if you're in the board gaming hobby and get lots of games, you probably know a few game stores, local game stores that you go to, and you can bring your kids with you, which we've done. You actually have to make sure that they understand how a store works and don't just take the games and leave. Because the first time we went to a store, my kids hadn't really been to many stores, and they grabbed the game and they're like, I want to get this game, and then they just started leaving without paying. So make sure they don't do that. But otherwise, it's very fun to even just window shop and look at games, or like they can pick out a game if they want to get it, or you can see what games they're interested in to put on their birthday list for later, stuff like that. And that kind of ties into my 5th activity, which is organizing your game shelf and game collection. So my kids, now that they know what a game store is, they like playing game store and like making our collection into a game store. And that's what they say when they're organizing our game shelf. Once again, if you aren't super concerned about your games and the organization of them, I guess you have to be like that for all of these activities. You can let your kids organize your shelves. So our shelves are actually very full, and my kid likes taking the games that we have on the floor, the overfill games, and saying, oh, this can fit in the shelf. And he just puts it in front of all the other games, or like in the little crack where it fits, and he tries to get all the games to fit. And he also calls it the board game store. And he's like, yeah, now it's the board game store. And he plays board game store, has me buy a board game, and then we can play it. It does make it so that sometimes it's hard to find a game when we actually do want to play it. But he has fun organizing our game collection. So that was 5 ways your preschooler can be involved in your board gaming hobby with you, other than just playing board games. But if you do want to play board games with them, you should check out some other videos that I have where I talk about games that you can play with your kids. Let me know in the comments if you have any other ideas of ways to involve your kids in the hobby. Thanks for watching Board Game Blitz. Bye.